said a bard's life can often be a hard life, or hill in jail to rove and always move from town to town. And some folk have inquired if ever we grow tired of ranging all around the world and never settling down.
But one should be a little wary of remaining stationary. 'Cause comfortable is lovely, but it's not the way we grow. When life starts to unravel, pick up your pack and travel. You'll find a strange serenity in places you don't know. Wriggle-dee-dum-dee-doo-da-terry-o-dee. There's so much to see beyond the open door. It's outward bound we go. Who knows what we'll find that we've never found before. Adventures waiting further down the road. It's waiting for you further down the road. You've got no map for showing which direction you are going.
But why start on a journey if you know where it will end?
And once you recognize,
to anticipate surprise, you'll relish every twist and turn that lies around the bend. Wriggle-dee-dum-dee-doo-da-terry-o-dee-da-dee-da-dee. There's so much to see beyond the open door. It's outward bound we go. Who knows what we'll find that we've never found before. Adventures waiting further down the road. It's waiting for you further down the road. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. The world has got its demons. There are many reasons why you'd find it harder to be brave than be afraid. But every life could use some danger. Every friend was once a stranger. Ships are safe in harbor, but that's not why ships are made.
Wriggle-dee-dum-dee-doo-da-terry-o-dee-da-dee. A fwit-da-dee-da-dee. There's so much to see beyond the open door. It's outward bound we go. Who knows what we'll find that we've never found before. Adventures waiting further down the road. It's waiting for you further down the road. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Adventures waiting further down the road. Let's go! Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-da-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-da-da-lie-da-lie.
Hello, friends. Greetings. Good evening. Spooky times. Woo. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into folk magic and some scientific stuff as well, which should be interesting. I'm always curious about the crossover between science and magic and where they really define one another or not. Anyway, before we do that, this is things I gotta say. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba. Nope, that's not the right. Everything moved. This is stupid. Okay, hang on. There, I have a book. Ta-da! You can totally find it online on Amazon. Dread. Even if all you do is type Dread into the search bar on Amazon, we're one of the first things that comes up. It's me and my friend Devin Borkowski, who's an amazing native artist for the Rappahannock tribe. She did all of the art for this, and I am so grateful for everything that she created. It looks amazing. Other things that I'm doing, I'll be here again tomorrow. I'm doing Flash Phantasmagoria. I'm trying to really, really reinvest in writing and creating and whatnot. So you should definitely come join us tomorrow if you have the chance. It's like a nice little lunch break style situation. You can also check out other Nat 21 things, including Destination D&D interactive RPG experiences in exotic locales. Sometimes exotic means England. Sometimes exotic means New Orleans. So you can think what you want, and you can check out everything. I think they are finishing up a tour in Italy right now that is, I don't know if it's Destination D&D specific, but it was involved in that somehow. So anyway, lots of cool stuff. Feel free to check it out online, destinationdnd.com. Also, we have special guests tonight as well. But before I get to her, I must pimp her channel because she's awesome. This is 3D2U. They do personalized gifts for gamers. They have all different kinds of 3D printed stuff. They do a lot of custom work. They have things that they've designed all by themselves that are not like public things. So you should definitely check them out, 3d2u.org. We're following them on Facebook and Instagram and maybe Blue Sky. We had a discussion about that. Anyway, so here I am, and we'll get to the other things here in a hot second. So just to give a brief update. So on Friday, I will be leaving from here, which is Northeast. I'm in Pennsylvania. I will be leaving from Pennsylvania to start driving to Florida to do the Florida Renaissance Fair. I am one of their directors, so I have a lot of things going on. We will see, A, whether or not I am available on Wednesdays, and B, for at least the next 2 weeks, whether or not I will have enough internet to actually be able to run a game. That's the big concern that I have. Once we actually get the show open, then I should be more than capable of. We have an Airbnb at that point, so hopefully then things won't be difficult to do. But we also have like, a 2-bedroom cottage Airbnb, and it's tiny, and it's going to be real interesting to try to run things when the baby's around. You know how it is, some of you. Anyway, so what I wanted to do tonight was sort of delve a little bit more into kind of the background of what we had previously discussed. See, I still have the book. I still have all of my notes that we had discussed before. The last time I was active on the channel, we were talking about, there is a very specific story called, this is The Witch of Urban Legend. Let me see if I can find it. Come on. Where is it? The Hex Murders. Yes, the Hex Murders in rural Pennsylvania. And I happen to have grown up in an area that was very close to that. And that was like a local legend for a long time. And it is a very different picture of what witchcraft is, based on these things versus based on what you may have the perspective of what witchcraft is based on media and maybe your own experiences as well. And we're also going to talk about things scientifically as well, too. And to do that, I'm going to bring my science friend. This is Amy from 3D2U.
Hello, I am the science friend.
And you're also a professor. Professor Amy, the science friend.
Yes, I've been teaching chemistry, and this semester I'll be teaching forensic science. So that's going to be fun.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, first question. You guys get to do anything with real cadavers?
Not in this level. Usually that's if you go into the medical level for coroner or medical examiner or forensic pathologist. But this is just an intro class, so a lot of it is just a little bit of here's the basics of what they do in forensic science, and I'm trying to make a couple fun labs. Like I'm working on a blood spatter lab now where they'll get to measure, like put droplets of blood down, fake blood, of course, and for biohazard reasons, and then measure how wide the diameter is depending on how far it falls down from.
Oh, that's so cool. See, now that is one of those classes that I would want to sit in and do. Like
it's just a fun class.
Just to do it, yeah. Like even it's just like an elective. Like they've never, when I was in music school, they wouldn't let me do things like that. I had specific things I had to take. But I wish I could have done like science lab. That's amazing. Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yay. Victorian. Greetings, Professor Science Friend.
Yay.
Yay. And Amy, we've had on this channel more than once, not just because she is the co-owner of 3D2U, which we advertise all the time, but because she has the science background, and we have asked her many a question about murder. So while I'm going through my presentation, which has 0 pictures, and I'm sorry about that, if anyone wants to start cooking up some questions about like, hey, would you like to ask Science Amy some murder questions? You may feel free to do so. That's okay with you, Amy.
That's totally fine. So for people who might not know, my master's degree is in forensic science and my bachelor's degree is in chemistry. And if you want to talk random weird science, I might be able to make something up. We'll see. No.
Yes. Well, I'm going to get to that in a bit. So today we are talking a little bit about, okay, so this is The Witches of Pennsylvania. It is a book by Thomas White. Previously, I had spoken about this. This is where I got the actual more or less definitive tale of the Hex murders. The basic breakdown is in like the 1920s-ish. In rural Pennsylvania, this guy believed that he was being cursed. And he kept going to all of these different folk practitioners. He was also a folk practitioner of magic as well. And he went to all these other folk practitioners being like, who's cursing me? That's the only reason why I'm having bad luck. Who's cursing me? Who's cursing me? And eventually somebody gave him a name. And then he and I think it was like him and a cousin and like a friend, because of course it was. They all go over to this guy's house and they like hung out and talked for a while and everything seemed fine. And then later they were like, no, we have to go back and get his stuff. So they try to go back and get a book of his. And somehow they end up killing him. Yeah.
Yeah, that totally didn't escalate quickly at all.
No. And then seriously, that is like, oh, we have to go back and get his special book, which is like a grimoire. It's supposed to be like, this is how I practice my magic. This is my guide. So they were told to go back and get his grimoire, and somehow they ended up murdering him and then lit his house
Share
on fire.
a beer, borrow some books, murder. It's like Tuesday, right?
Yeah, it's just a thing. Yeah, and then the 3 people that were involved were eventually put on trial, and the big deal was the reason why these guys were going to this person's house in the first place is because this dude totally believed that he was being cursed, that someone was out to get him and was cursing him specifically. So that's kind of where we're starting is that's the occult, etc. A lot of Pennsylvania-based witchcraft, folk magic specifically, comes from Germanic traditions. That's why I also went into, I will have to spell this in. If somebody speaks German, please tell me what the hell this means. Disperkenkeiker? Disperkenkeiker, which looks like the spooky guy. It was an intro to German folk magic. So I'm citing my sources today. And you guys can check it out online. This guy, I'm gonna put it in the, oh, hang on. Yeah. There. That's how it's spelled, but with umlauts over the O. Disperkenkeiker.
Okay.
I don't know what that means. It looks like the spooky guy.
It kind of does.
But I don't know if that means that, or if I don't think it means anything offensive in German, at least, because this guy seemed very kind and knowledgeable. And at one point he was like referencing You know, and then there was that thing in the 1940s that we don't really talk about anymore, but we can't ignore. And then a lot of Germanic folk magic traditions fell off after that. And I was like, oh, because you're German. Oh, I get it. Also, I have to look at this guy's video again because he kept saying, I think he was saying folk magic, but I kept misinterpreting it as something else. Like, I don't remember what it was. It just sounded, because of his accent, it sounded funny. And I wish I could remember the joke, but I don't. Yeah, exactly. Google Translate does not help. No. It's dumb. Anyway. So, within Pennsylvania, there's a lot of Germanic traditions and Germanic folk magic. This guy in particular recommended, if you want to look up stuff about Germanic folk magic, you should really focus more on, he actually recommended like nature documentaries. He's like, look, every different region, because Germany wasn't united until like the 1840s, every different region of Germany has different practices, usually based on the things that are around them. So if your community, his example was, if your community is, hello, Screaming Dragon. If your community is a community that is based in woodworking, your community, you know, cuts down trees and makes things out of wood and builds houses and stuff like that, then a lot of the folk magic that you will probably see in that region is related to trees and carving blessings into trees and things like that. There's also a huge tradition in folk magic about passing things down generationally. So some of it's anecdotal. So if your grandmother says you have to spit in this waterway before you cross it, otherwise the fairies will get you, that's what she's telling you, whether or not it's realistic. And you're probably going to do it because that is part of your culture. That is part of, you know, and especially if other people do the same thing, then you're just going to accept, oh, okay, this is what we do. According to Brave AI, it means a typo. Great.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, Sprechstimme is yeah, it's a vocal speaking. It's when it speaks singing. But I don't think that that's what it is. I don't know. This person created their own thing. They might actually go by they and them, and I apologize if I am misgendering them. Thank you, Evelyn Evermore, for trying. We appreciate you. Germanic folk music, Germanic folk magic traditions vary drastically by region based on the topography and what the industry is at the time. So there are going to be some places that are going to be really based in like wood and the fairies and the fae and things like that. There are going to be some places that are based more in fishing and water lore, depending on where you go.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then once those traditions migrate over to the United States, to specifically Pennsylvania, to the Amish country, etc., which is where a lot of this next game that we're going to be doing is sort of based in, things get a little weird. It is also apparently important to note that German folk magic focuses a lot on animism. And that is the idea that everything has a spirit, including things that don't talk back to you. So a table, a tree, squirrels, rocks.
Just imagining the squirrel spirits right now, just like, hey, what's up?
We need to talk about the squirrel spirits right now. Yeah. I swear, all of my friends, as much as they're like squirrel spirits, I know there's a ton of people here that are squirrels. There are a whole lot of other people that are friends of mine that are definitely either raccoons or possums. There's a whole lot of friends of mine that are like, I am related to a possum in that I scream and fall over and like,
yeah, that's the mood. Like, though possums are ugly cute. I love possums. They're so ugly cute.
It's funny, like, okay, so tangent on possums. This is one of the few possums are one of the few creatures where North America has the worst version. Because if you look in like Australia has freaking adorable possums. They are so cute. And I think possums are the only marsupial in North America as well. Am I correct in that?
Yep. They're the only marsupial.
So
Yeah.
they have a pouch?
They do. They have a pouch and they carry their babies in their pouch.
But then eventually they all just hang out on their backs.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, once they get older, they just kind of like cling there on the back. It gets a little too big in the pouch when they're climbing around, I think.
That's so weird to me. But yeah, like if you've ever seen an okay, everything else in Australia is awful. And I've been there. Like, there's some horrifying things out there, believe me.
Everything wants to kill you in Australia.
A lot of things do, yes. Even the things that are really cute want to kill you. Like platypus can kill you if they really want to.
Yeah, and koala carry, what is it, chlamydia or syphilis?
Chlamydia,
Chlamydia, there you go.
Their populations are drastically declining because they give each other chlamydia all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you look at possums in Australia, they are adorable. They're really, really cute. They're very fuzzy. They're kind of orangey. Like they're like brown and orange and white. And apparently their favorite thing to do is like crawl into the crawl spaces in your house and get stuck in between things. So people find them in their chimneys. People find them in their like when they're doing renovations in the house, then they'll suddenly be like, oh, I guess the drywall has a nest of possums in it.
No.
They're just way cuter. They still do the like screaming and falling over thing, but they're just much cuter in Australia. Anyway, it is important to note. All right. Germanic folk magic. I think when I was watching the video, I was eliding everything. So instead of saying Germanic folk magic, I was just saying Germagic. Germagic. That's the unknown Jackson sibling, Germagic.
Germagic. Oh no.
Okay. So anyway, in Germagic, so animism, and there's also, especially in folk magic, a lot of ties to Christianity, which is really interesting because you normally think of those two things as being opposed. Where you look at Wicca as an actual religion, where there are codified sort of practices and maybe not necessarily exactly how you do something. There is we get together as a coven, we do this thing together, we are called to these spirits, we call to the four corners, we wear specific robes, things like that. There are a lot of practices in Wicca which look very religious, and that's for a good purpose. It is a religion. And paganism in the same way. There are coded ways that you can practice specific types of paganism, whether it comes from a German tradition or if it comes from a Nordic tradition, or a more English Anglo-Saxon tradition. Folk magic is different in that it incorporates pretty much everything it's surrounded by. So that often includes Christianity, especially in Pennsylvania now, but also in Germany, in the folk magic practitioner, whose name I cannot pronounce, had also mentioned there are small enclaves in specific parts of Germany that have folk saints that are not actually canonized within the Catholic religion. The Catholics religion. They're not real saints according to other Christian-based religions, but there are like folk saints in Germanic folk magic, Germagic, that you pray to in specific regions. So that's a big difference between what you would see in terms of witchcraft, generally speaking, versus what we are talking about now with folk magic. And then especially when you get into America, it often mixes a lot with Native American magic as well. So Native American practices. There's also like the terminology. This is what frustrates me. The terminology gets mixed up a lot. So in this stupid book, which is very good and very informative, they talk about powwowers a lot, referring to non-native people practicing magic. And I'm like, no, I feel like that is very specifically a native thing. But because they sort of cross over with one another, you get this, a lot of terminology crosses over as well. Including, this was interesting, which I did not know. So the other thing that I checked out is this guy, Donnie Laws. Please, I'm going to write this down. You guys need to check out this video because it's very relaxing, if nothing else. Mountain Witches of Appalachia. I hope I spelled that correctly. Is
this the gentleman with the nice sounding voice?
Yes.
Ah, yes.
So this is Donnie Laws, Mountain Witches of Appalachia. And I thought it was going to be like a science-y sort of thing about like, here's, what mountain witches are like, and this is the common practices in these different regions. No, this guy sounds like he crawled out of a mountain himself, and then just sat down and be like, he's probably like smoking a pipe and sitting on somebody's front porch while he's recording this. Like, it's brilliant. It's wonderful. He's his own cryptid. It's great. So definitely, yes, Victoria. So it is also similar to, yes, Old Gods of Appalachia. I have not actually listened to much of that podcast. I know some people that have been really, really into it, and it's beautiful. It's very well done. It's won a lot of awards. But honestly, because the slow drawl makes me fall asleep, I can't necessarily focus on the creepy things that are happening because I'm just too relaxed. But anyway, please check it out. Donnie Laws, Mountain Witches of Appalachia. And at one point, he goes into witch doctors, which is something that is brought up in folk magic. And I, of course, am thinking, like witch doctors, like from Looney Tunes, where they're stereotyped as being like, I don't know, I guess like South Asian or South African, and like, voodoo practitioners and all sorts of stuff like that. No, it just means somebody that isn't actually a doctor that you go to for folk healing, basically. So that is definitely the, the traditions of like chew herbs to make this feel better, or, things that are less, I guess, marginally less scientific, but maybe there are some backings to them now. I don't know. That I would love your opinion on that, Amy. Is there anything that you've covered in science that you're like, oh shit, we didn't know that was going to work?
So a lot of our modern medicines, and it's funny when I see people that are like, don't take modern medicine, only do herbalistic stuff. Like, well, a lot of our modern medicines are actually concentrated versions of the herbalistic stuff. They took that herb, they kind of took the stuff out of it that makes the effect actually happen. They found out which piece of it made the effect happen and concentrated it. So instead of having to like drink an entire bowl of leaf juice, you just take a pill and it's the same effect. So most of our modern medicine, I'm not talking like the RNA vaccines or anything, but like Tylenol was from a plant that people used to chew on. And I forget the name of the plant right now, of course, but people used to chew on, and it would have a pain relieving effect. And then as science became more mainstream, they realized, we can basically put that thing in a solvent, pull the properties out of it, condense it, and make it more effective by making it into a condensed version. Wow. And then making it last longer by putting it into a pill version. Yeah, willow bark is another thing. Yeah. People still chew on that, and they use extracts from that for anti-nausea medications, ginger as well. So a lot of medications have started off as plants and folk magic. And one day it was actually a lot of monks, hilariously enough, because they had nothing better to do, would play with these plants and turn them into medicine.
Okay. Follow my logic here. So what I briefly sort of know about monks, specifically in the 1600s, is that a whole bunch of them brewed beer. Mm-hmm. A lot of them wrote books, like the first versions of the Bible that we have were hand copied. And now I guess they also just hung out and like did drugs, like literally just hung out with each other and did drugs until they could figure out what was going on.
Yes,
Like,
actually. And then you have genetics is another thing that was started by a monk playing with pea plants.
oh yes, I do remember that. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Monks were real bored, so they started basically modern science.
Well, and then like you see in the original copies of like medieval books, you see, you know, like pictures of cats that no one's ever seen a cat before, or like clearly somebody who was very bad at drawing was given the test of you have to do this book and draw things in the margins. Yeah, now it sounds like being a monk was like the thing to do.
It basically was. There were a lot of rich people whose sons either went on to become more successful rich people, or if they weren't great at being successful, became monks.
Okay.
So that was like your two choices: be successful in business or become a monk.
That's amazing. I guess like given the two choices, honestly, I'm like, okay, I have to work my ass off my entire life, or hear me out, I can make beer,
Yeah.
hang out with plants, do drugs,
Yep.
and occasionally write books. And
Yeah,
that's
just have to be faithful to a religion, like extremely so, and then you're good.
that. Wow. Okay. See this seems like hashtag monk life, man. Anyway. Okay. Okay. So witch doctors in Appalachian folklore and in Pennsylvania and the surrounding communities of the Amish community, there are witch doctors that are basically medicine healers. So they are taking herbs and things out in the environment and telling you what to do in order to help yourself. There's also and then there's like medicine witches too, but there's also witch doctors that can reverse hexes for you. So that's the other thing, is that witch doctors, see, I'm hoping I'm not getting that wrong. Witch doctors go against the bad witches. So if you believe that you are being hexed by another witch, or you believe that an angry spirit is coming after you and doing terrible things to you, then you go to a witch doctor and they're going to be the ones that tell you, this is what you need to do to stop this, or here's the source of your problem. Go figure it out, which is probably where all of the hex things came into play as well. And then this is the final thing I wanted to talk about briefly, which I kind of skipped over a little bit, but I'm curious if you have an opinion on this at all, Amy. So there's this idea of water witches, specifically in Appalachian folklore, where water is such an important source of life. And especially within the mountains, there are lots of hidden springs.
Mhm.
That is such an important aspect of a community. There are people that still walk around with dowsing rods, or they have an innate ability to find water. And I'm curious if there is any kind of science backing that anyone's ever found for things like that.
So, as far as like chemical knowledge, not so much, but theories that I have based on kind of mixing science and spirituality together, because that's always a fun, interesting thing to do for me, is a lot of things that we perceive in the world. Essentially, like, we get data that comes in and our brain perceives it, and sometimes we subconsciously perceive things that we don't consciously realize we're perceiving. So there's a possibility with dowsing or any of those types of things where you intuitively know where some place that you're looking for is that subconsciously you're aware of certain signs that might constantly be attributed with these locations, like the way the soil is, or the way the plants grow, or the way the air smells. You might not consciously realize it, but subconsciously you do, because of that perception, that data intake that you're having. And some people might have stronger connection to that subconscious information and be able to follow that into finding these locations. So that would be my best guess, is more of like a just data sensation where your brain can connect better to your subconscious to see these things without you actually knowing that you're seeing these things.
Well, and I'm also curious. So I know a lot of people who can hear, like, I can only hear electricity when I'm really, really close to like a big station. But I know there are a lot of people that can like either feel the charge or feel or hear electricity when you like stand next to an outlet. Yeah. So I wonder too, especially with now everyone being able to be like, oh yeah, no, autism is a spectrum and there's a whole bunch of different versions of that. I wonder if there are people who would traditionally have been considered like witches that were autistic or ADHD or OCD, some kind of other spectrum disorder that potentially gives them a gift to be able to find water in places where you can't find it normally.
I would not be surprised at all if that was the case. Like I said, with different parts of your brain, some people have different parts that work differently, and that would be considered an autism or neurospicy flavor of some sort. So that would make 100% sense, kind of like how some people think that changelings and fairies were actually people with autism. Witches and spiritual practitioners may have also had a form of autism that allow them to perceive things in a more detailed way than everybody else can.
That's really cool.
You hear TVs.
Yeah, Jesse just reminded me. He's like, yeah, you hear TVs if they're on anywhere in the house, like the buzzing sound that they make.
That's
wow. Crazy. Yeah. And there's certain lights that drive me nuts. Like if I'm in specific rooms at the school, I'm like, I can't. This light has to go off because it's making sound, and it's not okay.
See, and I normally, I mean, I can hear things like that to an extent, but it normally doesn't bother me at this point. But like Tom is sort of the same way. If the if the microwave is on and I'm trying to have a conversation with him, he cannot talk to me until the microwave is off, because he can hear, I mean, you can kind of hear like the sort of buzz, but that distracts him so much that he cannot have a full conversation with me otherwise.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. That is fascinating.
We're affected by LED lights when they start going bad.
Oh yeah. I don't know if anybody's ever, this is another perception thing that most people don't know that they're seeing, but you can see it if you use your phone on slow motion. If you have an LED light in your room, if it's starting to go bad, it will flicker, but imperceptibly to your eyes don't pick up that. Well, it does pick it up, but your brain isn't translating that flicker. So you're not knowing that you're seeing the flicker. So people start getting headaches or maybe feeling nauseous or feeling unwell. Wow. And they won't realize that it's because their light is flickering at a frequency that your brain is kind of just filtering out, like, oh, we don't need that information. We just need to know that there's photons in the air so we can see things.
Wow.
You use the slow-mo to
Yep. So if you use slow-mo on your phone to check your lights, you can see if your light bulbs are going bad. And if you've been getting headaches in that room, then it makes sense.
Wow. That's so cool. Yeah. I've seen stuff like that, like whenever people are filming something that has like I'm filming it off of my TV, or I'm filming on my phone on
and you'll see the device. TV frames.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is wild.
And that's the data on your phone picks it up, but your brain, when watching it, just filters that part out. So a lot of our reality that people don't realize is actually our perception, which is why I tell people, I'm like, you can have a different reality than the person sitting next to you because they might not perceive all the same things that you do, and vice versa. So even though, yeah, we're all living in the same reality, we're actually not. It's all about our perception.
That's wow. See, science. Anyway. Friend. Yeah, so that was pretty much all I have in terms of just talking about, folk magic and witchcraft, but how different it is, which I did not really realize until going into this research, like how different it is than Wicca being a religion, and how practices can vary widely, that there's no categorized way you have to do specific things in order to practice it. So I found that really entertaining and interesting. And I love adding in the science behind it. All right. I'm also curious about, so, obviously for a very, very long time, there was this idea of alchemy, of like turning lead into gold and things like that. But that's basically just chemistry. Am I correct? Okay. Is there anything from ancient alchemy that actually works? That's what I want.
I'm not sure exactly if there's anything from ancient alchemy that actually works practically, but I can tell you that lead can turn into gold. And hilariously enough, this is a story, but one of my students at the beginning of the semester asked me this, and I said, listen, when we get to the end of the semester and we talk about nuclear chemistry, I will answer this question.
Wow.
So in nuclear chemistry, there's something called beta decay. And it's where either a proton breaks down into a positron and a neutron, so your element now has one less proton and it becomes a different element, the element that has the proton less than what it started with.
Mm-hmm.
Or you get something where it's the other type of beta decay where a proton ends up becoming an existence from taking in another particle. And when that happens, you gain a proton, so you become the next element on the periodic table, because each element, the proton is specific to the element. So if you change the number of protons,
Right.
you change the element. So if you have lead and you change the protons enough times, you can get gold. Now, doing it in practicality would cost way more money than that piece of gold would be worth, and that's why we don't bother doing that.
Okay.
The
So there, it
energy-
is possible, but it's just not practical.
It's not practical, but like naturally, atoms that are sitting around for billions and billions of years can change depending on the rate of their beta decay for that specific atom. So you'll start with something and it can either lose protons and become other atoms that way, or gain protons and become other atoms that way. So a lot of alchemy was the idea of being able to make that change happen. We haven't quite been able to do that so much intentionally, but it is something that is observable when you look at different decays in the nuclear reactions.
Wow. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
What about, okay, I think I asked you this before off the channel, but now I am curious. Okay, so this is just talking about elements themselves. So that's the main building block of everything. What about, like, can you turn coffee into meth?
So
But they're really similarly structured. Like when you look at them in terms of those little hexes and stuff, they look really similar. And is there chemical reactions that make that happen?
So I'm not sure if I could talk about how to make meth on a channel. But
No, don't do that. But I'm just saying, like, in terms of what it actually looks as a molecular structure wise, are there ways to adjust a molecule to change it into something else that is a completely different molecule?
So that's actually something that happens all the time in chemical reactions in general. Is you have a molecule, something happens where it's hit with energy, or it has a catalyst that helps it move, and it will react with another molecule to create new molecules. Now, whether or not coffee specifically could become methamphetamine, I don't know if they've developed a method for that, but Sudafed can, and that's why Sudafed is something that you have to show your ID for, because people can easily, too easily turn that into methamphetamine.
Okay. That is, wow.
Yeah, so there is possibility that it could, with the right extractions and distillation. And we technically sort of learned how to make meth in my orgo class, but we were sworn to secrecy never to tell anybody how to do it, because my teacher realized after he said it what he said and that he wasn't supposed to tell us.
Oh, no.
He was a pharmaceutical technician who literally created medications through distillation. But yeah, same thing. You can make alcohol through distillation, and it's just a chemical reaction. You start off with ingredients, it has a chemical reaction, and boom, alcohol. So everything in life is chemicals, and with the right reaction, with the right molecules that want to react with each other, you can create brand new things.
Is there any, like, I guess, anecdotal story of like, ooh, surprise, we turned this into something very different that I wasn't expecting?
That's a good question. I don't have one off the top of my head, but I'm sure that it's happened. And especially in medicine discovery, I'm guaranteeing that there has been cases where they've been researching something and went, oh, we were trying to get this, but we got this instead. So why not?
Like, and now we've cured AIDS. I didn't realize we could, but okay, great.
Ooh, yeah, could happen.
By the way, for reference, in coffee, there's over 1,000 chemical compounds.
Jesse wants us to know, because he just Googled it, that in coffee there's over 1,000 chemical compounds.
So it's not just one structure.
Yeah, so it could be multiple different structures that could be used to potentially create meth in coffee.
Meth in coffee. Oh God. Yes.
Caffeine
Hooray.
is the most legal addictive drug, so hey,
It is.
why not go further?
It is fascinating.
But don't make meth, guys. Like, just don't.
No, don't make meth. It's not worth it. Yay. So we've now reached like the point of the night where if anybody wants to ask, this is the ask me anything type thing. If you want to ask other questions about witchcraft, not that to be clear, I am not any kind of authority on this, and I have done a reasonable amount of research, but not like an actual scientist would go in and research things and look into all kinds of books and things like that. Like, because this is a no consequences sort of environment, like it's a role-playing game channel. I feel fairly confident in what I am speaking about. However, I would assume if Ansa came back on here and then said like, no, here's how, certain practices work and this is why this is different, etc. I am not a definitive answer for these things, but I did find some really cool information. So yeah. Now, Amy, on the other hand, has a master's degree in forensic science. So if you do have questions about, I don't know, blood spatter and murder, then you can ask them because she knows. We do know how to make meth. We won't tell you.
So we do have a question. It looks like, what do you think the weirdest thing that is theoretically possible? Okay. So that's a very broad question. I'm assuming you mean in either witchcraft or science, since those are the two topics we've been talking about. Is there a specific one or both compared, or just in general, the weirdest thing possible? I mean, some more information.
Well, like the okay, so you said like an element can go from one element to the next on the periodic table based on decay. Okay, so what are the two elements that are like right next to one another that turn into something completely different? Like obviously hydrogen and helium are pretty close. That's noble gases are relatively close, but then you start getting into like some really weird solids the further down you get.
Yeah, you get some wonky stuff. So I'm going to pull up a periodic table now, because the reason the periodic table was made is so that we don't have to remember it. I will never make anybody memorize the elements of the periodic table. That's just silly. So you have lead and bismuth are pretty close next to each other. So lead, we all know, is pretty toxic. If you put it in paint and lick the wall, like, you're gonna get sick and die. It's not great. But it's useful for a lot of metallic compounds that we tend to mix together. A lot of alloys have lead in it. Bismuth, however, structure looks completely different. It can have this like rainbow sheen, and it is the first but least radioactive chemical on the periodic table. So you've got lead that's not really radioactive, and then bismuth that is a little radioactive, not enough to actually hurt a person because it takes so many billions of years for anything to actually happen, but enough that it is able to be classified as a radioactive element.
Wow. So is there a point like it go lead, bismuth, like does it just whoop like right into the next thing once there's an official it changes chemical reaction or decay reaction?
As soon as it gains that proton, because lead has 82 protons and bismuth has 83, as soon as that proton gets gained from that beta reaction, it's called beta decay, it would change its properties completely.
Wow. Is that like not a nuclear reaction per se, but
no, it is. It's considered a nuclear reaction because it's a reaction that happens in the nucleus of an atom.
Okay.
So,
but I would assume that is not the kind that like creates a whole bunch of energy.
Not really. So the best type of reaction for creating energy is actually nuclear fusion, which we are starting to get positive results on with the hadron colliders and everything, which is great. So nuclear fusion is taking two elements, smashing them together and creating a totally new one. The sun is nuclear fusion. It's a bunch of hydrogen atoms smashing together to create helium, then smashing together to create the next ones and the next ones and the next ones. So every element we have is created from nuclear fusion happening from different suns and stars around.
That's cool.
So space is neat. But let's see, the weirdest thing that is theoretically possible, comparison, please. So I would say a lot of people might consider things like maybe like spirits weird, or like energies type of thing.
Yeah.
Via a science and a spirituality standpoint, I firmly believe that energies and spirits and things could theoretically be real, because everything has energy. Every electron has energy. There's electromagnetic energy going through us and around us and everywhere all the time. So all it would take is for that energy to be on a certain wavelength for it to be perceivable. We ourselves, like souls, we don't really know what they are. They could just be energy. And being that everything is technically energy, all matter is also energy, souls should be energy as well. So having a lingering energy that manages to stay together, being a ghost or a spirit, makes sense to me, because if that energy has an attractive force to each other, it could stay cohesive enough to maintain a consciousness or an echo or however type of spirit you might think it might be.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
And is there, I mean, is there any research into anything like that?
I don't know. Mostly, I don't think that there's big research on it. I'm sure that there have been some people. I know that people have tried photographing spirits and stuff like that, but the funding for these things usually isn't good, because governments don't want to fund this. And doing this type of research without funding to have good instrumentation is really hard to make a cohesive, peer-reviewed paper that people will take seriously, unfortunately.
Tell her about the aura experiment that we did.
Oh, we actually did an aura experiment. So, auras are like the colors that you might see around people or things.
Yeah, and the people have tried to do aura photography as well, of like, your aura does these kinds of situations. Yeah.
We did one of those. We had a person who claimed that they could control the color of their aura, and they had come over, they stood in front of a white backdrop, and Jesse took some pictures of them. And I came home from probably school at the time, or work, one or the other. And I come up to the computer. I was like, oh, that's a really pink backdrop. When did we get that? Like, that's a really nice pink backdrop. And he was like, no, that's white. And I was like, what do you mean that's white? It's pink. It's obviously pink. And the girl was like, see, I told you it was pink.
Wow.
It was white.
Yep. His mom couldn't see it either. She was like, no, it's white. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was apparently one of the few people that I walked in and immediately saw pink in the picture that was on the computer screen.
I never saw it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So it's interesting. And again, different perceptions. Jesse and his mom never saw it, but I was able to see that color difference in the picture. So it was weird. I'm not really sure what that means, but it was a thing that was definitive. Like, he was like, where do you see the pink? Mm-hmm. And she was like, I told you I was making it pink.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. See, now I'm trying to think of what do you think is the weirdest thing that is theoretically possible? I mean, I all kinds of random stuff. Okay. Going around with folk magic, folklore, etc. I have to imagine that maybe not all cryptids, but that there are some that are a version of real. Now there have been some studies about like, oh, okay, this isn't a chupacabra, it's a dog with really bad mange. Like, it's sad, but there are, different things that can sometimes scientifically explain some of what's going on. But I feel like because, and it's all over the world, like so many different cultures have their own versions of cryptids all over the world. There are got to be some that are a little bit real. And actually there is one, I think, is it Thailand? It's either Thailand or maybe Vietnam. There is a Southeast Asian country that that has a specific way that their dragons look, and they look like weird fish. And then eventually people found oarfish, which are these like 30-foot long like ribbons of fish that just come up every once in a while. And sometimes you will find them dead. That's most of the time what people see. But now with improved technology, you've actually been able to get some videos of them alive. And that's like, I got to imagine it's not just one occurrence, that there are got to be way more things like that really exist in reality. We just haven't been able to prove it yet.
Yeah, no, I speaking of dragons, like it is interesting to me that every culture has a thing that is a dragon. Now they might look different, but like Europe, they don't have lizards like a lot of other places.
Yeah,
So how did they come up with dragons? Yeah. So it's an interesting thing.
Architeuthis the squid.
Architeuthis.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you did not know, the giant squid. Hold on.
Yeah, come here. Join us, since
Hold
you
on.
want to speak about things.
Hold on. I'll bring my adventure ahead.
Come hither, join the
Okay,
couch
okay.
parade.
No, you're talking about things that technology proved. Hello.
No.
This is the husband, Jesse. He is amazing, and he has a hat.
I have a
You
hat.
and you usually have a wizard beard, but that is
I usually have a wizard beard. For those who first time seeing me without my beard, I wanted to be able to zipper up my jacket, so it was hurting a lot. Architeuthis giant squid. For years, its existence was denied. We would only find evidence. I'm not sure what you had just said. What were you speaking on? Something else, or just this is
the dragon types in
the dragon?
Thailand.
Okay.
dragons and
yeah.
other cryptids.
So the Architeuthis, massive squid. It was denied, but they'd see the damage on on whales and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they did not know it was existing until one day there was a fishing line out to catch something else, and they saw these tentacles like the size of Amy come up and grab it and just rip it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were like, what was that? What did we just discover? And then that was the first video. And then the second event that actually, I believe, that made it nationally acknowledged was a fishing vessel was out and they had caught one in their net. And they said it was as big as their hold. And they said, empty all the fish from the hold. This is worth more than any of the fish we had. They dumped it out, put it in there, and went to the Smithsonian. And the Smithsonian, this was so recent, they actually did live streaming of the autopsy of it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, they had that. And then the other thing was rogue waves. Rogue waves were extremely... If you said your ship got damaged by a rogue wave, they considered you a drunkard and would pull your boater's license. It wasn't until cameras on a shipping container vessel caught it. It was going along, a rogue wave came up, and they could see it from the side of the camera. The side came up like beside the shipping container and like overshadowed the entire thing. Of like, oh my God, the sea was calm. What is that? And then it just slapped, and it completely concaved all the shipping containers on that side of the boat. And they had to report it to insurances and stuff like that. After that, they had to start acknowledging rogue waves were real, and they started having to pay out insurances, and people who had claimed rogue waves had destroyed their ship in the past would then reverse it, and they would be able to get their shipping license, their boater's license back and stuff like that. It was a huge thing. People were considered murderers up until that video, because people would say, oh, you just didn't sail correctly and you killed everybody on your boat, so you're a murderer. That was a huge event. There's actually an old movie that really outlines that, where all these people go out to a school, and the school is on the boat, and it's teaching you real life things. It's like a university, and rich people take the boat. Spoil the ending. It did end with a rogue wave, and it really outlined how hard people get judged and picked on if they claimed rogue wave. So those are two major events that were relatively recently, in comparison to everything else.
I would love to be able to have a cryptid that then I could like claim an insurance of like, no, my car got hit by a chupacabra. Seriously, it did.
Like Bigfoot slashed my tires. It definitely
happened. Bigfoot slashed my tires. Yes.
It wasn't Swampcast. It was Swamp Thing.
Yeah, see? Exactly. Also, just fun fact, if you ever get a chance to watch some of them on YouTube, because Teslas can't tell the difference between like gravestones and people, it is the funniest thing in the world to see that like the like you're driving through a graveyard and it keeps being like people, no people. Yeah.
Oh no! I mean, yes, but no. But yes, it's not
Active
wrong.
God, no, active Mothman.
Active Mothman.
Another fun thing, because I love doing photography. We were talking about the auras earlier. Another fun thing we did with that was, remember we did the ghost event at
at Fort Mifflin, the one that Philly Fair used to be at. Yeah.
Okay.
And we went through there, and what I did is I took photos of stuff, and I was like, okay, there's something in there, I don't know what. There's something in there, I don't know what. But you just get a weird. Everybody has a sense of like there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
You just gotta relax your mind enough to feel it. But there's something. So I posted it to different groups, the ones that I felt had stuff, and it was fun when I would get responses back by different groups saying they saw this. Now this was before Facebook and stuff was heavily used, so it wasn't like the same person on 30 different things. But it was neat seeing like, oh, I see this, oh, I see this, I see this, and it's like, oh wait, I've got like 10 people saying they see the same thing in this picture. And it was fun because the person I know who really is great at being able to see things, it was what they saw. So strangers across the pond saw the same thing as the friend that was there. And that was really cool.
Yeah. That all goes back to what brains can perceive what things, and everything being a form of energy has presence.
Yeah.
And if you can perceive that energy, then you get to perceive that presence.
As a person who collects things, one of the things I have is a knife/sword that may or may not have been used in a actual fight. I don't know, but it's got an energy to it. So this sword had been lost in my house for the longest time. Well, this one day the friend came over and I said, hey, I haven't been able to find my sword. Can you tell me where it is? They said it's in that room against the left wall, tucked behind a suitcase. And I said, oh, thanks. And I went to go get it. They said, no, it doesn't want to be disturbed. It wants to hide. I'm like, oh, that's cute, but it is a guest in my house. And I went, grabbed it while they were there, and it was right where they said it was. I pulled it out like, hey, buddy, you're not supposed to be back there. You're supposed to be with the other swords. And I put it with the other swords.
Can we see the sword? Do you even know where it is right now?
I do. Yeah, I'll go get it. Some services do not allow you to show weapons. I don't know if I'm allowed to show it.
Interesting.
So it would be considered an actual
It
weapon.
is a real sword.
Yeah, so I apologize.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Hey, we will err on the side of caution. I do.
If you message Facebook on 3D2U, we can probably send you a picture of it through email or something.
There we go. There we go.
Not a problem to do that. Sorry,
No, that's great. I didn't even think of that.
That's a great terms of service situation. He does all the techie stuff, so he knows all the techie stuff.
I know what I can and cannot photograph.
That is so funny to me because I mean, like, we're on a role-playing channel. So like, there are times where people will like bring out like silly weapons and be like, haha, I have a weapon. We normally don't live stream entirely to YouTube. So I don't know.
And it's not always real weapons, like it's a fake plastic thing or something.
Yeah.
Like
no, this
is an actual sword that may or may not have blood on it. So.
Yeah.
What do you mean if it may or may not have blood? You could test that.
I could test it if I wanted to test it.
My sister's roommate was a pilot when I was a child, and he had come back from some adventure. We never really understood where he was going. We don't ask questions. For all we know, he was flying below the radar, if you know what I mean. And he was like, hey, I brought you back a gift. And it's like, what did you bring me? I can feel it. Oh, we also got real voodoo dolls. That I think I can show you. But we don't play with them.
Yeah, we leave those alone. We
Yeah,
don't bring out the voodoo dolls. His mother found voodoo dolls at the thrift store. And of course, we were like, we need to know if they're real or not so that we know what needs to happen with them, because you can't just throw away voodoo dolls if they're real, because bad things. So
I was gonna say, that is like a legitimate beginning of several horror movies.
Yes. So we had them checked out by a few people and they were like, yep, they're voodoo dolls. Just let them live peacefully so that nobody disturbs them and it'll be okay. So they live happily on a shelf somewhere, just hanging out. As far as we were told, actual voodoo dolls, not puppets, but
wow,
that's just what we were told by the two people who had looked at them and said, yep, yeah.
This is
So-
that you got ghosts in your blood. You have to do cocaine about it. But name
God, don't do cocaine either, friends.
bud. If we're gonna show cats on the stream, we might as well show cats on the stream.
Oh yes, yes. Remember that cataholic comment earlier? Well, we are
Yes.
cataholics.
Leave the cat.
I
Yours
say he's
is-
my little familiar. I'm not necessarily witch, but he's still my familiar.
And that's Poochie? Yeah,
Poochie cats.
Poochie cat. And this is Aramis, and he is huge.
Say hi, Aramis. Hi. He's like, I can't even see the screen. I know not what's happening.
Aramis is part Maine Coon. He's not as big. I don't think he's as big as Dan's cat, Milo, but he's up there.
He pretty floofy.
Yeah. He's big boy. Come here. Can you be cute for a second? Can you be
Yay.
oh, he's pissed off?
Say
Huh?
hi.
I know. I'm
Yeah, they're both like, why are you making me do this? What's wrong with you?
all right. Well, we're still hanging out for at least a little bit. So does anyone have any forensic science questions? Or we can keep talking about cryptids and knives. But I don't know. I find all the forensic science stuff really interesting.
Oh, Sally did ask a question earlier that it was it the same bismuth as in bismuth paregoric, which I'm assuming is some sort of medication. Yeah, it's bismuth would be in most medications an ion of that form. So essentially it's an ion is an atom that has lost electrons and is then able to bond with something else. And when that happens, elements can take on different properties when they become their ion form of it. Think about like sodium chloride. So sodium and chlorine or sodium chloride. Sodium by itself is a metal that's very reactive to water and actually explodes. Chlorine, very toxic. You put it in pools to get rid of any sort of germs and stuff. But together, sodium chloride is a tasty food additive salt. So when it's an ion form, it has slightly different properties than its atom form.
Is there anything in chemistry, kind of like, I don't know, for a long time there were people that were like, oh yeah, cigarettes, they're going to cure a whole bunch of things and make you skinny. And then they're like, oops, sorry, we were so wrong. Has there ever been anything like that that's gone back and forth a bunch of times of like, hey, you should do this. Oh God, we're so sorry. We didn't mean that. Well, but wait, do we mean that? Yeah.
There's been a lot of things that have done that. To name one of them, it didn't necessarily go back and forth, but we used to give people mercury for certain illnesses.
Yeah.
And then we found out that it is extremely toxic.
Okay. like was there a property in mercury that was actually helping the ailment?
There probably was.
Everything dies. Yeah.
There probably was. I don't know enough about that specific treatment, but I'm sure that there was something that was helpful at first, and then they realized that it was actually killing people differently.
Yeah.
But that happens with a lot of different medications or like things that we add. Pesticides, for example, people have a certain pesticide and then suddenly 10 years later, like, oh, wait, that pesticide caused cancer for an entire generation of people. We should probably stop using that. Mm-hmm. Most of the times it doesn't ever really go back to, hey, let's use that again. It's more, hey, we use this for 10, 20 years and then realize that it's actually causing major complications. So science is not perfect. Mostly what I tell people is science is the effort of finding the truth that we are able to find at that time. Now that truth can change with new data. Science is not about finding, it's not knowing the ultimate truth. It's finding something as close to the ultimate truth as possible. And
I was going to say, do you ever get to a good enough point in science?
Gravity. Because we're like, we're pretty sure that it works the same way everywhere. It's not quite a law yet, but it's enough to be a theory, which in science, a theory is, hey, we've tested this a lot and it keeps coming up with the same results. So we're pretty sure it's good. But then you've got like the law of thermodynamics where they're like, yeah, no, this works the same no matter what. Nothing changes this. This will always be the same.
Okay.
So when you have a theory has been tested and pretty true. They're like, this is pretty close. Maybe one day we'll find something that could change it, but like we've tested it really far, so it's pretty close. the laws are the only things where they're like, okay, well, the law of thermodynamics, the law of entropy, these things are, they know for 100% fact that they always will do what they do. But other things are like, we've tested it pretty well, pretty thoroughly, and so far we've gotten the same results, but there's always a chance that something new could come about and change the situation.
Wow.
And for those out there who might not know, if you have a guess on something, that's a hypothesis, not a theory. People say, I have a theory, when they mean I have a guess, where it's actually, I have a hypothesis in regular scientific terms.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a big word, though. You know?
Yes, it is. Saying theory is a lot easier, so I don't blame people for using
Well,
it.
and then words mean so many different things that there are. The language in general, and I was going to say the English language, but that's just what I'm familiar with. I know that they're in every language. You will get colloquialisms that will turn into statements that will turn into, you know, what the word theory means could mean something completely different in 10 years than what we are thinking about now.
Oh, absolutely. Language is fluid, and it's one of the beauties of it is that we're always developing new ways of communicating with each other, which is really cool.
Yay.
Oh,
Okay.
we found the voodoo dolls.
Did. Oh.
They feel lighter.
They feel lighter.
Yeah, feel.
They do. Are
That's-
they missing?
No. So
We've accidentally replaced the voodoo doll with cat toys. Oops.
voodoo dolls are really creepy when you find them in the real. But once they're done being voodoo dolls, they're just dolls again. And you don't feel anything. So
Yeah.
if this does not creep you out, don't be surprised because this feels light. They might not be voodoo dolls anymore.
Yeah, there's two cases. Either the magic wore off or the people are no longer with us.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, I feel like it can be a doll to a point, and then afterwards, like when the person isn't alive anymore to be manipulated by it, then it's just a doll.
Yeah, it's just a doll. So it feels light. We just kept it to protect it, and it might not be a voodoo doll anymore. So, you know.
The cat is very
We don't
concerned.
touch them, by the way, just for obvious reasons.
That is beautiful.
So you can see the pins, the charms. We don't know what the intent was with these, so we just kept them pristine and safe. But they feel light. Like, look at them. They
Yeah.
feel
Okay.
light.
Just pointing out that your mom handled them at some point.
She found them at the thrift store.
Yeah,
And
and
knew something was weird with them, so she brought them to us.
and also that other people at a thrift store handled these things multiple. Well, and then somebody decided that you could sell them.
Yeah.
That is
Everything that ends up at Goodwill. So we have the outlet store where it all just ends up in bins. So the people at the Goodwill don't really like sort through it too well. So I'm guessing they just were kind of like, yeah, okay, sure. You found that in a bin. It's whatever the price for the weight is. Cool.
Wow. That is bizarre.
Yeah.
All right. See, now I'm trying to come up with like forensic science questions that would be fun.
Well, another thing that I find interesting is like trying to talk about science and magic together.
Mhm.
I don't know how much it has to do with the Germanic folk magic. I don't know if they deal with things like crystals, but people talk a lot about crystals and different witches and spirituality and such. And people will constantly say like, oh, well, is there any possible truth to this? Like, can crystals get your butt out of the screen? Can crystals
I have
have
come through you, my butthole.
Yes, he's like, butthole. Can crystals have energies or frequencies or this, that, or the other thing? And for my experience, knowledge of chemistry, crystals are atoms that are arranged in specific structures based on the properties of that chemical. So like quartz crystals are silicone oxide components that fit in a specific pattern. Based on how their bonding interacts with each other. Salt crystals are the same. They have a very specific bonding. As we all know, inside all atoms are electrons, and inside of molecules, these electrons move around to different energy levels depending on different situations. Well, we know with quartz is actually used for having different energies go through it. Why can't I think of, you know what I'm trying to talk about, the specific... It's not a laser. It might be a laser.
It's not
everything's a laser. But
Sound waves with rock.
there's specific things with quartz that are used for scientific instruments because of the way that they are able to vibrate. They use quartz for different that's what I'm trying to think of. For spectrometry, they make the cuvettes out of quartz because the way the light's able to go through it way better than glass. Glass can distort the light where quartz will not distort the light. And different crystals can, in my opinion, have different vibrations because of those energy structures within it. Because every time those electrons jump up and fall back down, they're at a wavelength of energy. And then when people give me a hard time about that, I'm like, okay, but uranium does things to people. So obviously crystals can affect the outside world somehow. You just have to
you were
be
talking about
receptive to it.
bismuth before too, and I remember looking at like the bismuth crystals. Does there have like a square structure or something?
Yeah,
Or, like,
actually, can you grab my bag over there? I have
You just have
my
bismuth in your
Yes, I
bag?
have bismuth in my bag. I showed it to my students because they were curious about
I
it.
knew you had bismuth. I couldn't find it.
No, you found my pyrite. Took it to school. So I do have bismuth. It's really pretty. It's a tiny, tiny little piece.
didn't you also say that it was radioactive?
It is mildly radioactive, but not enough to harm people because it is so
No more
long
than
of a
downside sign.
lifespan.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
And
That
the
is
little stepping stone is actually hollow for each of the pieces the way that crystal forms.
That is so
You can
neat.
get the camera to focus on it. But
Oh, I
yeah,
love that. Oh, that's
and
so
that color is actually the oxidation of the outside. So oxygen will end up attaching to the outside of the bismuth, creating an oxidative layer.
cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Oh,
That way?
my periodic table.
Which way makes it so they can read it?
That way looks
Okay.
good.
You need a
Yeah.
piece of paper?
I'm seeing myself in the reflection.
Oh, there you
Ah.
go.
We got
Oh,
this.
yes, paper. So all of the elements there. But yeah, different crystals have. Oh, this scratched up on the back.
Oh no.
Did it get like moved, slid along the
I don't
table?
know.
Probably.
I was still standing up when I saw it.
There we go.
you go.
So yeah.
Ah!
You dropped it. There we go.
Wait, okay. So this is a glass sealed container with all of those elements?
I think it's resin, but yes, it has it has like pieces of elements, little vials of the gases, the solids are in there as solids that can be. And there's some of them that, like the really radioactive ones, are not in here. They just have a little radioactive symbol, but
Okay, I was going to ask. I was like,
Yeah.
you have like arsenic in there right now? Like, for real?
there might be arsenic in there because it's not radioactive. So,
Right.
yeah. But just tiny little pieces, tiny samples of everything. And it's encased in resin, so you're not getting it out if you really wanted to try and lick some arsenic. You know? No licking arsenic.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a dumb thing. I have a dumb question. that
No
has
such
nothing
thing.
to do with anything else. What is succinylcholine, and why did people use it all the time to poison people?
That's a great question. The name is so familiar, and of course, I'm blanking on it. So let's see. Ye old Google.
I think it's used a lot in like
There.
medical, like angel of death situations.
It's a skeletal muscle relaxant. So, just like a lot of other muscle relaxers, if you take too much of that, it stops your heart because your heart's a muscle. And if it's not able to move, then you die. So, that would probably be why it would be used for something to kill people.
Well, and I don't think that, I mean, I guess now they probably can trace it, but I think at least initially it is metabolized in such a way that you can't find it.
So, funny story, actually. That's where the word is familiar from. Okay, so I was writing my forensic science lecture, and this was actually spoken about in the forensic science when we were talking about techniques. So there's a going on a tirade here. There's a whole thing about, you might have heard Fry states versus Dalbert states. Well, these are different ways that the states are able to look at evidence. And some of them agree that, the evidence has to be proven, widely accepted. These techniques have to be known throughout the scientific community. Otherwise, it's not usable. You can't use techniques that are not known. Anything new has to go through a rigorous process of years before it could ever be used. And then others say, well, okay, if it has the basis of other tests that are proven, even if it's a new test, if it goes by the same theory, then you can still use it as long as enough people understand like what's going on with it. And that's the difference between the Fry and Dalbert states. With acetylcholine, one of the arguments for, I believe it was Dalbert, saying that no, it doesn't have to be that strict. We can use tests that are similar, was previously there was no test for acetylcholine in the human body.
Yeah.
And a forensic scientist found the metabolites of succinic acid, which is the metabolite of acetylcholine. Because all drugs, when they break down, they create metabolites, or essentially what's left over that didn't go into your bloodstream.
And that's what you're usually testing for in forensics, of like, oh, this person has traces of these things in their body.
Yep. You normally test for the metabolites after the chemical is broken down, because you're not going to find that initial chemical before your body starts breaking it down in most cases, unless it's super overdosed with it. So they were looking, they did a full tox screening and went, this is really high. What could this be related to? And so they did their research and found out that it's the metabolite of acetylcholine. And so they used that to say, like, hey, this was in such a high amount that it should be lethal to a person. Like, normally the amount's this much and this was this much, and that's not good. Well, the defending attorney tried to argue that, no, that's a new test, so you can't use that. That doesn't count. That evidence is inadmissible. You can't use it. It's new. And the judge said, well, it has the same toxicological method of any other tox screening. So it's legitimate. We can't let justice wait for science to catch up fully. If it has theoretical basis that works well enough, that's been proven to work well enough, and it's a new chemical or a new application to it, then as long as it makes sense, it can still be used.
Okay.
So yeah, that's, sorry, tirade, but that reminded me. I was like,
that was awesome. For quite a while now. Granted, this was Forensic Files, so I'm watching a lot of murders from the 80s and 90s, which is most of Forensic Files. But yeah, there's a lot of angel of death situations that were acetylcholine and they couldn't test for it. And I was like, okay, what is this? Why does everyone use it? What are we gaining from this? That's awesome. Thank you for letting me know.
So now they can't quite use it as much because there are tests for it now.
Brain is so big, it's so pretty.
It's one of those things where I'm like, that word is familiar. Where did I just see that word? Like, oh, I wrote an entire slide on that word 2 days ago.
There we go. Aha! Look at me doing your research for you.
Helping my brain remember everything that I've been working on.
It's only because I'm into true crime, because I'm a white bisexual woman.
Oh yeah.
Yay. Does the class have any questions for Amy or whatnot? Otherwise, we will gladly wrap up a little bit early. But I hope that was a little at the very least, I hope it was very interesting for you guys to hear some backgrounds about cool chemistry and the basis of what chemistry is now and how it was kind of folk magic and witchcraft in the past, which is cool. And what the difference is between practicing paganism, practicing Wicca versus practicing folk magic, and what we will be discussing when we get into the game, I hope. Depending on if I have internet. We're going to try.
But yeah, no, talking about just briefly on the medicine thing again, I personally am for using a mixture of herbal natural remedies and over-the-counter medications, because sometimes just chewing on a piece of willow bark or sucking on a piece of ginger can help so much if you don't feel like going out and buying whatever pills, the ginger and bark anti-nausea stuff, or so many other things where putting honey and lemon into tea is really great for your throat, and that's technically an herbal remedy. Or boiling chives and cinnamon on the stove and breathing in the hot steam to help clear your sinuses. Herbal remedy still works. Some of these things, I'm not so sure about the onions on the bottom of your feet to get rid of a cold. That one has
just a reaction. I don't think it does anything. I mean, it's the same with if you go online and you have people saying, okay, I'm going to put these pads on my feet and then it'll get toxins out. It's just a chemical reaction with the sweat on your feet.
Yeah.
There's also some things that were just they were thought to be folk and stuff like that, but really they were just funny advice. Like if you're walking and you get cramp, you have to go find a smooth stone and rub it against the cramp. That's just using a tennis ball against your leg. It wasn't or anything like that. It was just like good advice. You sit down, you relax, you rub your leg. Don't press the mousey, kitty, even though that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it wasn't like super witchcraft or anything like that. No, it was just something you do when you have a cramp. Sit, relax, get your mind off having the cramp, and
massage
your leg.
Massage it, yeah. I am curious. Okay, so obviously, we're also waiting because London Fog has a question incoming from their spouse.
Stall.
So, okay, obviously, earlier we talked about monks and that their favorite thing to do apparently is to just do drugs and determine what things are cool. Ooh, I don't know that. Yeah, what's the no? Emission. Oh, got it. Like
body fluids that
I think so. I think what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yes. For semen, obviously semen has DNA in it, so you can identify someone with their DNA profile through semen. Vaginal secretions, I hope I can say that on this channel.
The rest of the
about science. It's totally fine.
Be mindful of trigger warnings past that.
Basically, there's cells that come out with any fluids that leave your body, so you can always pick up cells. You can't type it. Oh no. Okay. I'm sorry. Oops. I hope we didn't get canceled.
No, because this reference would be from a medical standpoint.
Yes, this is all medical.
Yep, medical.
Medically,
completely medically.
Just birds and the bees. This individual was made by half of one person, half of another person. That information was delivered. That DNA information was delivered through the download.
What about chimera syndrome?
So that one's really interesting. It's rare, but it is.
I watched a lot of CSI. Cool. I know what it is.
Yes. So chimera syndrome is basically when part of your body has one set of DNA and the other part of your body has another set of DNA. Now, they're both technically from your parents, but you would test as your own sibling in different parts.
Yeah, there's a belief that it might be like an absorbed twin kind of situation or a couple of other things too. But
yeah, absorbed twin. Another theory that I've heard is essentially that when the replication process happened, something got mixed up with the crossover of certain genes that caused you to have ones that the rest of your body didn't. Like your heart and liver might end up replicating with a crossover that your skin and other tissue didn't. The more common one is supposedly the absorbed twin, but I don't really know how they can kind of solidify that without a lot more testing, since it is a relatively new thing that we're aware of.
Well, and it would have to occur really, really early in gestation. Like it'd be almost impossible for you to be able to see it, at least in terms of like regular ultrasounds and stuff.
Yeah, because it would essentially have to happen when the egg was duplicating. If you had two eggs that started duplicating, so you've two eggs, sperm hits two eggs, and you would normally have twins. But those two eggs end up kind of merging together as they replicate, and one makes some organs, the other makes other organs, and bada bing, bada boom, you now have someone with two sets of DNA.
Yeah. Sometimes during a surgery, they find you have this mass of hair and teeth in you, and they remove that.
Yeah, they're like, that's not supposed to be there.
That was the pain. It's just
yes. That is so cool. What was the other? I'm gonna have to backtrack in a minute. Okay. What about people who are like bigender or are like XXY and stuff like that? Like when you're doing genetic testing, some of them are technically infertile and some of them have, does that make the genetic testing super hard when you have different chromosomal anomalies?
Not really. So when it comes to infertility, when it comes to certain things, body fluids, etc., there's still going to be DNA cells that are in that. So if you're testing via that, you can still find DNA. If you're just testing a person in general by taking like a blood sample and testing their DNA, you won't have a hard time coming up with a profile. But what might happen is you might see something weird. Like if they're an XXY, you might see a big signal for the X gene, because forensic DNA testing can't test if you've got multiple X's or multiple Y's. It just tests, is there an X there? Is there a Y there? So for a woman, like a biological XX, not saying that that's the only woman thing, but for a biological XX, you would have a very large X signal and no other signal. If you were an XY, you'd have kind of a medium X signal and a slightly smaller Y signal because the Y chromosome is a little smaller. If you're an XXY, you'd have a really big X signal and a small Y signal, and so on and so forth.
So cool.
With more in-depth testing that's specific for testing multiple chromosomes for sex chromosomes, they would be able to see if you had any sort of sex chromosomal, I don't want to say disorder, but differentiations, I guess would be a better word. But that would be a very specific test. The reason why is a lot of the testing that is done has a very specific chemical that goes in and sort of is programmed to know which alleles, which chromosomes to look at. So like a karyotype testing would be better for looking at the sex chromosomes and all the chromosomes in general, where a DNA testing can look at specific pieces of the DNA to see what alleles you have that show. For forensics, we look at junk alleles that essentially have no programming information. Because if you looked at the programming information for your like hair color and eye color, you're going to come up with hundreds of thousands of people that have brown eyes and brown hair. But if you look at the junk DNA, which is the layman's term for it, you'll see that it's replicated copies of like 3 to 5 strands of letters to represent the different pieces of your DNA. And each person will have a different number of those replications. Like I might have 8 TCs on one chromosome, but you might have 10 instead, and someone else might have 13. And when you look at 12 to 22 different areas on different chromosomes, you can see that in a population, it's very unlikely for 2 people to have the same exact set of 20 alleles with that same number of nucleotides for it.
That's wow.
I got a question for Amy.
Yes.
I don't know if this is something you know or not,
Okay.
but because of their question,
We'll find out. Yes.
Is there anywhere on your body that you know of you can't find your DNA at?
So it used to be the shaft of the hair, but now there's actually methods to get DNA out of the shaft of your hair. You don't need a root anymore, but there's only one company that really does this. Other companies don't have that technology. It's a proprietary information from that specific company. But like if you have teeth and your teeth happen to have any of the fleshy bits inside still, you can get DNA from that. Now, if it's a really, really old tooth and all that's dried up, you're not likely to get DNA from that anymore. DNA also breaks down over time. So people might say like, oh, I can get DNA from this thing that's X amount of years old, and not, you might get a profile, but it's not going to be a good profile because it's starting to break down.
Yeah. That was
another thing that came up recently. So I don't know who lives in the area, if they heard about the poor, unfortunate woman who was found in the fridge near the Cape May forests.
Oh, wow.
A lot of problems that people were talking about online were like, well, why don't they just find her by her DNA or find her by her dental records or this, that, or fingerprints or whatever? Well,
if she was in a fridge, she would be like decaying, right?
She was so far decomposed that fingerprints were no-go. Dental records, a lot of the teeth had already fallen out, so they weren't really able to do anything with that. And DNA, one thing I was explaining to a lot of people who were like, well, it's easy. They should find her by the DNA. I was like, well, even if they got a good profile with her being so far decayed, she would have to be in a system for them to find who she is. If you are not in a system, they can't find you. And they said, well, what about ancestry DNA? And I was like, well, they need to put in a court order to be able to access that to see if their profile is on there.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, because people fought for their privacy, and I understand wanting privacy, but people fought for police officers not to be able to access those systems.
Yes.
You can't just access those systems and find it overnight. It takes months to get a court order to identify a person with DNA.
Yeah.
And that's hoping that they've done an ancestry test.
Yeah, and I know Ancestry and what's the other one? 23andMe.
Yep.
Both of them have a lot of restrictions in order for you not to have to do that. But there are other companies. I mean, that's how they found the Golden State Killer, is that there are other companies that relatives of whatnot can potentially.
That's actually genealogy, which is slightly different than genetics because they do a lot of like the family tree research as well. So they'll go to libraries, look up family trees, find birth certificate information, and trace people back step by step that way, which is really, it's interesting. It's side to side with genetics, but ever so slightly different because you don't need to be a geneticist to actually do this. You just need to be really good at going to libraries and researching things.
Are you talking about the one where they found the guy's brother, but then they found through they did both, right? Where
they had
DNA
the genetics
said that this person was like in Michigan, but then they had to find out that it was the uncle or something like that through the genealogy.
So they used a little bit of both for the Golden State Killer, which was interesting.
Cat. I'm trying to remember what my stupid question was because I had a really cool question.
I'm sorry.
Early, no. Because we were waiting for Victoria for London Fog to come out with what they needed to ask for their stuff, and now I can't remember what I was about to talk about.
I forgot where you were going with what you were saying.
Elements, and the other things are presumably you could argue that someone just died in their sleep, and there was something else that I was like, oh, I definitely need to ask Amy about this, but now of course I can't come up with it. Oh well. Anyway, I should probably get going so that my husband can bring the baby upstairs because she's probably asleep now.
Oh, that would be fingers crossed that she stays asleep for a little while.
It's been a thing. Cool. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm gonna throw things up here again. Assets. This is 3D2U. They're our friends. Go check out their stuff. If you ever want to create a newer version of this, because I think this is a couple of years old at this point.
That's glorious still. That's beautiful.
Yeah, we sell the same stuff still. So
yeah.
Love it. But I know you have a lot of new things that you have been putting out as well. So if there's anything new you want to advertise, let us know.
We're finally getting around to DM screens, which has been beautiful.
Ooh. Yeah. Ooh, I might have to get one for Tom because he's been talking about that for a while. I have a book. You should check it out.
Yes.
It's really cool.
It's really awesome. Definitely check it out, guys.
Did you guys put it on Audible yet?
No, because again, baby not sleeping, which means
yeah.
Destination D&D, check that out online. Bother Paul and Ansa about it. And tomorrow at 12 noon for lunch break, we're gonna write spooky stuff because we can. So feel free to join in and create art with me at that point.
Spooky.
All kinds of fun stuff. But thank you guys for joining me tonight, and thank you for providing your expertise, especially when it comes to the idea of like folk magic being this sort of beginning of a lot of medicine and a lot of like real things that you can find out later. Oh, that's what I was going to ask. Sorry.
Ooh.
What makes you decide that you want to lick a frog to find out if you can feel better afterwards? Like, who?
Desperation.
Like, it kind of goes back to me of like, okay, so some cultures have invented kimchi, and I know why, but it still seemed like a bad gamble at the time. And like, okay, so were these monks just hanging out being like, okay, there's a frog here. What if we lick it? What happens?
I mean, also probably yes, but even before the monks, a lot of times what people would do is if they saw an animal do something, they'd go, why did they do that? And then they'd kind of watch the animal and be like, they seem to be having a good time. Let me try that and see what happens.
I forget where I remember seeing on one of the nature documentaries, there was specifically observations of monkeys doing it. And then people were like, so it started probably there. Then it was like, you know what? I'm going to keep this frog with me. This frog's great. I love this one.
And honestly, it all probably started one day. One creature was like, I'm going to lick that frog. Let's see what happens. Might not have been a human, might have just been an animal, but they were like, you know what? You look lickable today. Let's do it.
Another factor was probably somebody one time picked up one of the really poisonous dart frogs and was like, oh, look at this frog. Okay, we're going to put that on darts from now on.
Don't lick that one.
Don't lick that one.
This frog.
Yeah.
These mushrooms are the good mushrooms. These mushrooms are the ones that will murder you.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of finding out. To be fair, the scientific method was done before we wrote it down by indigenous people. It was F around and find out.
A lot of times with one of the things, if you look at old guides and things like that to know if berries were good. You'd take them, you'd rub them on your lip, and if your lip tingled, you knew they were not good, so you wouldn't eat them. That's documented, like Age of Discovery kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That was like what was really yeah.
Or they saw Loon licking everything.
Yeah. So that would be something they would do, and I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing applied to like frogs and stuff. And when you're hunting, it gives you an advantage to not have to chase your prey so far. So you make your poison dart frog thing, and hey, is this a frog that you can do? Okay, my lip tingles, no. My lip tingles, no. And then one day somebody like, oh, my lip tingles, no. I got a little on my tongue and the colors. Oh my god,
They made
eat
a
those
mistake.
frogs.
They made a mistake.
They're not for hunting.
These frogs are for adventures.
Different adventures. Yes, that's right. Victorian London fog.
Yes.
I didn't method is just F around and F find out. Yep. Okay.
I don't think you guys talked about tarot at all, but one of my favorite tarot readings was a person came in the room. The tarot reading said that they were going to get angry because they don't believe in this, and they did. They actually got so angry they left the party.
Ooh.
Yeah, we were having a party, and everybody's cracking up. They're like, and they were pissed, like, this is so stupid. Like, okay, they're gonna get angry and leave the party. Oh, they got angry, left the party, and the bigger the spread, the more specific the spread. So, like, if you do just a 3-card spread, very general, can apply to anything. But you do a big spread, the cards have specific meanings to them. So it really narrows it down. Basically, the more you write a report, the more the report is specific.
That's cool. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, science. All right. Anyway, yay. Thank you guys for joining us. We will see what happens next week. I will be down in Florida at that point, and we will see if I have enough internet to be able to do anything. So yes, cross your fingers and whatnot. But what is it? Oh, there's a dog.
It's a Gracie.
Hi, Gracie.
Beside me.
Oh, hello.
People. You don't care, do you?
No, she doesn't care. She's like, just cuddle me. She is baby.
I let go.
All right. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
And we'll see you around. Spooky things. Yay.